Hello, hello. It is time to do our purple fields. So I need to pop on and pick us up from there. There I am. Wow, how nice. So, and there's Vicky. Great, 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 great. Okay, so I'm going to cover a couple things first, kind of like that housekeeping stuff. I'm going to start with, I had a little conflict with our caregiver tonight. We just kind of miscommunicated. So I'm telling you ahead of time that it's possible that I may need to go check on Ryan. And those of you who don't know me very well, Ryan is my 34-year-old son who has special needs and the light of my life. Love him, love him, love him. So, but because my husband is traveling for business, if I hear odd things going on, I may have to take a little subdue break, but that's okay. So that's one thing. Another thing is that I showed you this painting idea with the red and the purple flowers, and that's what I'm going to be teaching tonight. But I also showed it to you when I did some white flowers because I was playing around with some different ideas that I could definitely see some different horizon lines, because in the red chair one, you don't really see a horizon line. You just see all the flowers, and it was confusing to somebody's eye, i.e. my husband's. And then I posted today a bonus, which was the same idea, only done a slightly smaller. And I did this with a gray-ish chair. And then I made those flowers, instead of the purples, I did them more reds, and I added some little black spots in them for kind of an illusion of an abstract poppy field. So I wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to show you that you could change the color of your chair. And I also wanted to show you that you can change the color and the shape of your flowers very easily. I'm going to add another camera to this little thing. One sec. Of course I am. This way and that way and this way. Sure I am. Oh, I don't lose it completely. Hang on. I love technology. I really do love technology. I do. Okay. Don't worry about that. That's just for me. Okay, but I wanted to do that to show you the different colors you could do with the chair, and then how you can manipulate the colors of your flowers. If you want to have a field of lots of color flowers, that's absolutely okay too. So I posted a couple bonuses, one being this whole thing. You saw the whole thing done. Actually, there was 2 videos put together because of a little glitch earlier. Doing the chair in a different color and the flowers in a different color. I showed you pictures of it being done in a different color with the white. I'll show you that here in just one sec. With a white chair and the flowers not being as over the top. There's just a few flowers, and we're supposed to kind of have the illusion of irises, which happens to be our flower of the month for our blooming brushes. I also gave you a little bonus of how to apply a pattern. Now I'm going to do all these things tonight, okay? I might not do them all on the same piece. I do that sometimes because of dry time. You really don't need to sit here and watch me blow dry something. You don't. It's not very exciting. However, you need to know where there is dry time that is important for you to use. So my biggest suggestion, and I do this in all my online classes, is I suggest you watch this all the way through and then go back and use the replay that you have access to for at least 30 days. It's usually a lot longer, but 30 days I will come in and archive the group so there's no more commenting back and forth. And sometimes I do take the videos down because I use them for other purposes. But you have a good 30 days for sure. But I suggest coming back with the replay, and then you can start and stop as you like. Such as tonight, I'm going to show you how to do the background, and I'm going to set that wet piece aside when I show you to do the next step, because I've done the background on something already. you're going to need to let that background dry before you do that next step. Basically, the steps for this class are going to be our background, the tracer, and the tracer is there really to just be able to give you that first base coat color that we're going to be doing on it. So we'll do that tracer. We'll actually do some of the greens, the background greens. We will put in that base coat color for our chair. And then we'll start building the color of our chair, whether you're doing your chair red or white or blue or black. I mean, we can work it out. When you have a question, go ahead and put it in here. Please know that I most likely, while I have my iPad off to the side and I'll try to kind of watch for a little bit going on, I probably will be more intent on teaching the class than on answering questions. I see several of you on. That's great. That's awesome. So we'll do, what did I just say? Background, pattern, greens, chair, background color, chair, color. Then we'll come back and start building in our flowers, okay? So first thing I want you to do is take a deep breath and let it all out. I'm also a yoga instructor. Did you know that? I want you to relax. This is a fun piece. I like to take a piece that looks a little more intimidating. It's really not intimidating at all. We're just going to take it step by step. We're going to take one little thing at a time and we're going to build on it. And that way you can hopefully walk away with a piece you're really pleased with. I have another small confession. It's not a big deal at all because it doesn't really matter, but I don't have the original piece that I took the picture with. I needed to borrow it to someplace that I'm doing this in person to because they had another live event tonight and they wanted to showcase it. And so that's fine. It's not a problem at all. We are going to be absolutely good. So I printed out the same sheet I gave you. Yours probably doesn't look quite as tattered as mine does, but that's okay. And just so you know, I've got the same materials in front of me. I have my surface. I'm going to be showing you the background. I'm just going to do it on a smaller canvas unless somebody really needs to see it on a bigger canvas. I wanted to stop here real quick and say that I know somebody mentioned doing this, repurposing a canvas. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I do it all the time. I will say that if I have done something, especially something very bold or with a lot of colors that may or may not work with the one I'm painting over it, I suggest giving it a good quick coat of gesso. Gesso is an acrylic medium that many artists like to use to prime their canvas. I rarely use it for that purpose, but if I'm painting over another canvas, I will do that because it kind of gives me a little more of a neutral surface to start with. Just a little tip. Extra tip. Look at all these little extra tips you're getting. All right, so I've got the little piece of instructions. So I have a piece of graphite paper that I will be using to transfer later. Now, graphite paper has a dull side and a shiny side. Graphite paper is a little different than carbon paper. Graphite paper will erase with an eraser. Carbon paper most likely will not. Doesn't mean you can't use carbon paper, but you have to be cautious of your edges because it's more of an ink than it is graphite. Graphite being more like charcoal or pencil. Think of pencil. Okay. I have my pattern that I have traced out. I have my dogs that are barking upstairs. Okay, and doesn't matter. Why do I trace my pattern? Well, I trace my pattern for a couple reasons. One, there is a muscle memory, brain muscle memory, that when you go over a pattern, your brain starts to kind of remember that. It may not even be like that you're doing it right then and there, but when you go back to do it again, they're like, oh yeah, I remember doing that. We kind of really, it works. The other reason is if I had, let's say I had traced my pattern and I'd laid it down and I'd started to use graphite paper to transfer it to my surface and I sneezed and I all of a sudden flipped my paper and it's over here. Well, if I'm on just computer paper like this, it's kind of hard to see through it. You can see a little bit, but it's hard to line that up. Where tracing paper is much more sheer, so you can actually then go back and line it back up and then continue your lines. The other thing that's great for is if you are doing a detailed pattern, let's say a Santa Claus, and you don't want to put his eyes and his nostrils and all the shapes of his mustache on right away until you base coat a face, because you're just going to cover them up. So after you've done that, you still have a tracing that you can line up and then go back and add details as you need them. Whew. Okay. Making crispy treats while I watch them painting. I love it, Cam. Did you need my address to send those to? I'm kidding. Okay, so we're going to get started. The colors you're going to need for your background, and whether you're painting this in your mixed media pad or on a canvas or a piece of wood, it doesn't matter. Now, when I did do this, when you watch this, you'll see I did not do the whole background first. I just came back and added some color after I kind of laid in my design. And I did that because of it being reclaimed wood and because it already had kind of a fun white finish to it. So I'm going to take and I am going to move a thing or two. Oh, I know the other thing I want to tell you real quick. So let's pretend for just a minute you've come to my class. If you came to my class in person, this chair may or may not have already been on your canvas. I say that because if I would do this with a slightly more sheer paint, you would still be able to see the outline of the tracer if I did it and then went over it with Sharpie. Now, if I just went over it with graphite paper, you wouldn't be able to see it. So sometimes you'll come to my in-person class and you will have your canvas and it will have a design and it might be traced over in Sharpie. Sometimes. Gotta tell you, a lot of my classes are kind of a little more free-for-all. It's okay. You would have a brush pack. So I try really hard when I am teaching a class to use brushes that I would supply in my brush pack. So if you showed up in my class, there's some other goodies in here too. There's a piece of chalk for applying patterns. This one looks like it's from the holidays because there still is a couple stencils in there. There's a business card in there. But you're going to have a larger, decent quality brush, like a 3/4 to 1 inch brush. You would have a smaller flat, like about an 8 flat. And generally a smaller flat than that. And this one's about a 4. A round. And they may not all be exact, but they'd be about the size of a 5 round. A liner. And then I almost always have either a chip brush. And a chip brush looks like this. It's a little bigger, you can see. Or just a brush that can handle some rougher surfaces because I paint a lot on barnwood, okay? Then you'd also probably have a round brush that could be used for stippling, could be used, in our case, for some of our flowers, but not the highest quality brush, but will do the job. And then generally a pencil, piece of chalk, that kind of thing. So I just want you to see what would you come to what would you come into if you came to one of my classes? If I knew we were going to be doing a big surface, to fill in on a porch leaner or possibly even to do this kind of a background, a chip brush, which is an inexpensive brush that you can get at hardware stores, Walmart, Hobby Lobby, and they, I'm being generous when I say they're probably $1, okay? They, when you first buy them, tend to lose some hairs. And so I almost always will pre-wash mine and just kind of like rough them up a little bit before they even go into service to my students. And they still might lose a hair or two here, but they cover a lot of surface quickly and efficiently. Okay, so we've done that, I don't recall, but I think in the video I did use a chip brush to paint my background. It's after 5 o'clock. And I've been a single parent all week. Okay, so I'm gonna grab a plate. Oops. For my paint and set this aside a little bit. And what I'm gonna do my base coating on for you, just because it's smaller, is I'm just gonna do it on a smaller canvas. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if I'm doing it on this, on 11 by 14 or something bigger. I'm just gonna show you the beginning of the background and then we're gonna flip to another surface and I'll show you the next step, okay? So I'm going to bring you closer. La, 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 la. And I'm gonna put you down. And I have a little bit of a delay on my iPad. So this is a 6x6 canvas. It's no different than if I was using my big canvas. It's just gonna cover a lot quicker. So, and I will also tell you if you're ever working on a wrapped canvas, I almost always go ahead and do my sides as well. Okay. I wanted this to be kind of a dusty blue sky. So that's why I chose the color I did. I'm trying to make sure we can see the right color. This should say Williamsburg blue. Perhaps we need to do it this way. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so now this should look like you're watching right over my shoulder. Yeah. I'm going to put the paint right on my canvas. Now, if I had a bigger canvas, obviously I'd be putting more paint on there. I'm going to also grab some white. Where's my white? Oh, I moved my white. Hold tight. Real life, people, real life. I'm not sure why my white was over there, but it is. I'm going to put a little white here. And I'm going to use a large brush. This just happens to be a regular 3/4 inch brush. And I'm just going to start back and forth to spread that paint all over my canvas, okay? Now I know I want a little bit of a ground cover, so I'm not going to worry about the very bottom. I am going to pull some of this paint on my sides. You have potential of putting way too much paint on. Don't worry about it. If by some chance you felt like you had way too much paint, you could always wipe it off on your paper towel or your plate. You want to have enough paint so it is moving smoothly. You see how easily those colors are blending? Now there I have a little bit too much paint, so I might just take a little bit of that. I'm just wiping my brush off onto my plate. Okay. If I want it to be a little more white, I can either I can either dispense it right on there, or I can, haven't cleaned my brush, pick up just a little white and lay on here to lighten, whether I want it to be lighter in the sky or maybe I want it to be lighter than the horizon. I've got a little doodaddy here. We don't need that. Okay. I want mine to be just a little lighter down toward my ground, less worried about my sides. I'm going to just wipe my brush and I'm going to pick up a little bit of red, okay? And I'm picking it up more on the skinny part of my brush, and I'm just going to lay it down a couple places, maybe a little bit on my sides, okay? I might wipe my brush quickly, and then I'm just going to blend. My paint is still wet, so it's blending very easily. And what I'm doing is just kind of creating a little bit of a I wanted to say summer sky, but that's not actually correct. I mean, there are times that there's just a little more color in your sky. And you can decide how much of that you want. And that red is going to become kind of a purpley color because I'm blending red and blue, for the most part, together. Anytime I want to add a little more white, I can. Okay. No two skies ever look the same or should look the same. Going back to my paper towel, and I'm just pulling that extra paint out with my paper towel. I have not washed my brush. I'm going to either put on my plate or directly onto my canvas. This happens to be desert sand. The idea is just a groundish color. So I'm going to do the same thing. Now, I know my brush isn't completely clean. I'm going to pull a little on my sides, a little bit of my bottom. Obviously, if you're doing just a standard 16 by 20 canvas, you don't need to do this on your bottom. Well, you can go around your edges. There's nothing wrong with that. And my color is not staying true. It's got a little bit of that blue in it because I didn't clean my brush. And I am going to wipe it up into my sky a little bit. Wipe that blue a little bit down. Now this is exactly how I did the original piece that you all saw and decided to take the class from. When I showed that original piece to my husband, he said it didn't feel like it had enough of a distinct horizon. So when I did this one, this is what I just did. I actually came above where I knew the chair was going to be and added a second horizon with the idea that I would do something like these little trees in the background and do little flowers and flowers here, just being a little different, just so you saw the chair sitting in horizons slightly different. There's no right, there's no wrong. There's just, because I knew my vision for this was this chair, I wasn't thinking about how I was going to have to see the horizon around it. Okay, but you see that this is this. I've done it on my sides. Oops. And there's always finger painting. But if somebody did this as a shelf sitter, it would be pretty much complete. I'm looking at the spot right here that I don't like, so we're just going to make sure that's blended in. Okay, we're good. So I'm just going to set that aside for right now. We might need it again. We might not. And I'm going to show you two different things. At this point, you should have a sky with a little bit of ground. I think it is easier at this point to actually just go ahead and put your chair in. This chair is too big for this pattern, but I do want to use that size to show you. So just give me some grace for a moment. We're just going to pretend I'm putting a pattern on here. I'm not. I'm going to use just a bigger piece here. This is 9.5 by 12. Maybe I should do the middle of my 14. You know, I think I should. One sec. I'm going to move this off to the side. This is my pattern. I have a slightly bigger multimedia pad here. We're going to pretend there's a background. This is just, again, to show you how to do a pattern, to transfer your pattern. Whether you use it straight from copy paper, and you can, or you've traced it out, it's usually a really good idea to just secure it with a little bit of tape, even just a little bit up at the top, just in case if it starts to move, you've got some stability. So graphite paper, again, is going to have a dull side and a shiny side. Your shiny side is always going to go toward what you want the transfer to be on. So I've lifted this up, slid this underneath here. You can use something like, this is a mechanical pencil that I will just push the end in, or you can actually even you can actually even use a little bit of it and you can see where you're going. or you can use something like a stylus. A stylus is a dotting tool. Most of them aren't this disgusting. This one has 2 sizes, so I could use either size, and I'm just going to transfer what I need. In this particular case, I need most of these lines. Note, there is no pattern for the flowers per se. There's a little bit of indication of where they're going to be, but that's about it. A pattern is a guide. It is not a life sentence. You do not have to follow it exactly. I do suggest when you're transferring your pattern after you've started to take a peek and make sure you can see what you need to see. Okay. There are 2 arms we want to transfer to this pattern. One in front, one in back. There's a little bit of a L behind there that is going to get covered up almost 100% with flowers, but don't worry about it. There's a box for the seat that I'm really wanting to make sure I have. I have a couple legs I really want to make sure I can see. And the back of my seat. All right, I'm going to peek. I can see that pretty well, okay? Now remember, we're going to pretend that this already has a background. If it does not, it's okay. Whatever color you want your chair to be, you can make work. So if you wanted this to be a red chair, like what I'm going to do, I'm actually wanting there to be some tannish wood that as this red chair weathers and ages, I'm going to see bits through. When I did the white chair, oops, sorry, that's not the white chair. That's, where did it, it's in the other book. Sorry, guys, on my lap. When I did the white chair, I based it with a gray, knowing I was going to come back and add the white as my main color and still using the black as my shading. When I did the gray chair on that piece of wood, I did the tan, kind of the same tan that's down below, just again, that as that chair was aging and weathering, I'm not going to just see the white from the page or the blue in the case if you've already put your background on. Okay. What happens if you put your background, your pattern on and didn't do your background? You certainly can do your background at this point. You would just want to work around most of your chair. And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to do this kind of somewhat, I'm not going to do this as precisely as I probably would if we were doing this in the class, but I just wanted to show you a little bit. So I would, instead of squirting the color on, I would probably thin it down a little bit with a little extra water, and I would start laying it down next to my chair. And again, I still want a fair amount. I'm not going to care too much if I go over, but I'm going to pick up white here and there, so I'm getting some different values of this color. So I'm letting my water be more of my movement than I'm letting a lot of paint. And it might be a lot more, I'm going to say sketchy. Might be a little more liney than if I just used regular flat paint. I'm going to make sure I think about those areas that are sky between my chair. Now that chair, I'm going to come around here. it's important to be free and a little liberating as you do this, and just kind of embrace that it's not ever going to be perfect. Another aspect for you to think about, right? Oh, I just picked up the red. It wasn't my plan to pick up the red, but gee, didn't that work out well? Picking up a little red and blending it in. Don't ever try to be exactly like, in this case, mine. I mean, just make it yours. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So I've really not disturbed my chair much. I would pick up a little of the tan as well. But note, in this case, I'm working much more from my plate than I am putting the color directly on the surface. All right. But again, I said I now have a basic background. And your background's not done at this point. We certainly will come back and add a little more to it. All right. I found that in the smaller pattern I did, the piece I did with on the wood and on this size, that about an 8 flat worked really well. It worked really well, but I don't know where it's at. Here's one. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and start base coating my chair in with the desert sand. Okay. And I'm just going to take, oops, it's a little wet. I'm just going to take one little section at a time. And I'm going to call these, as I'm painting them, pickets, chair pickets. So I'm going to take this first chair picket and I'm going to go all the way down with it. I'm going to stop where I get to the arm of my chair. And then I'm just going to go ahead. This does not have to be a super good base coat. It doesn't even have to be completely solid. It is an idea to give you where this chair is going to be when we come back and play with the color very soon. I've told many of you that I rarely draw my projects up first. I almost always just take a brush to canvas or surface, and then I create the pattern afterwards. That way you're usually getting the pattern very similar to what you see a picture of. Sometimes not so much. But you see, this is pretty sketchy. This is not a great base coat by any means. I'm merely putting the color down, but by doing each picket individually, I'm actually giving it a little more shape than had I just like base coated this whole thing. Okay. I need a little more paint. I'm going to start with this arm that's closest to me. I'm going to go ahead and that arm closest to me extends away from the pickets a bit. And the arm that's on top, or that's furthest away from me, is going to be almost on top of that front arm. There is no magic way to fill this in, okay? There is not. And I probably changed it up each time I did it, just a little bit. It's okay. You have this little support bracket back here that you're not going to see. Most likely I'm not going to see it all with your flowers, but go ahead and just make it L. It'll make more sense as you're creating your piece. Then let's think about this box that encases the chair seat. So like a rectangle here. You guys, again, this is sketchy. This is not very, it's just not very. So we're not going to worry about this a whole lot. I'm going to bring the leg down from my back arm. And we're covering most of this bottom part up, so don't fret at all. So back leg. Here's this leg. Goes underneath this arm. It is also a project that I used that reference photo a lot for, just to kind of look to see, what did I do? Where did I shade? And it's very possible at this point you're still seeing a lot of your pattern, graphite pattern, through this desert sand. Desert sand is not a very dark color. Okay, so I'm gonna need that for right this second, so I'm gonna rinse it out. Because at this point, I'm going to start pulling in my greens. So let's look at our greens real quick like here. And this is the first step of them. This is just the very beginning. But I want you to see that as I'm looking to put the greens in, they have a bit of a up and to the right tendency, okay? They're a little darker in my left corner and a little lighter in my right corner. Not by a lot, just by a little. Let me show you it on this one too. Some less so, but again, we have leafy, greeny. Okay, there are greens here under the chair, even in those spots that we made sure we left open. This is the piece I'm going to add our flowers to. And again, I've got greens that come up to here. We're doing these first greens, and then we'll come back and start adding in some color for our chair, which means we're going to come back again and do more of the leaves after that. Your leaves are, how's our green medium? How's our green dark? And festive green. These are my greens. If you're changing colors or don't have those particular colors and are looking for things that are close, this is what I suggest, is that your, let's call this your medium and your dark green are in the same color family, okay? If you don't have two colors, pick a dark green and add a little yellow to it to make it a lighter version of the green. And then you want a green that is a little more of a pop. You can do this with a round brush. You can do this with a flat brush, small or big. I tend to, on the size of, for the 16 by 20 canvas, like something like a 3/4 inch flat. When I pull my paints on a flat, I pull them out, I flip them over, and I pull them out. That gives me a nice chisel edge. And I'm just gonna start from the bottom, and I'm just pulling color up. There is nothing fancy about this at all. And then I'm gonna, without cleaning my brush, I'm gonna pick up a little dark. This is just the beginning. You will be adding more green. You'll be adding more green as soon as we put some color into our chair. So don't worry much about this at all. You do want to pick up a little bit of that brighter green and pull it more toward the front right corner, but you also want to pull a little in everywhere else too. Okay. I'm going to rinse my brush and just set it aside because I'm not going to need it until I come back and play with my grass again. We're going to start on our chair. So my chair, I'm going to show you the chair being red. So I need some red, some white, and some black. I used Tuscan red, really primary red, cherry red, almost any red would work. Just if you want this to be more of a barn red chair, you could use rookwood, you could use cranberry wine, you could use heritage brick. And almost all of those will be fine if you do the same combination of the red being your main color, having black for some shading and depth, and the white for some highlighting and bringing forward. So I'm going to go back to that about 8 flat. And I'm going to start red on my brush. I'm going to do the picket that's closest to the ground. How about that? And I'm going to go right over this color I put down. If your color happens to be a little thin, meaning some colors are just a little more transparent than others, and sometimes they're just not shook up enough, and sometimes they're just a thinner color. It's okay if you are seeing some of your base color, in this case desert sand, underneath what you are putting down here. In some cases, I kind of like to be sketchy and see a little bit purposefully, like it's already showing through. Okay. I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of black on the chisel edge of my brush. I might tap it a little bit. You don't necessarily need to. And I'm going to go right on the chisel, the skinny edge of my brush, right next to the next picket. It doesn't have to go all the way down, and I might lightly put a couple lines in the picket. I can wipe it off and go underneath and pull a little color. Okay. I am wiping my brush off of my paper towel, but not cleaning it. And I'm going to go into the red, and I'm going to do the next little picket. If I happen to pick up the black next to that, it might smear a little bit, so it might not be a clean red. That is okay. Go all the way down to the arm. Skip the arm, go under, fill in the rest of the picket all the way down. Now I told you this is a loose interpretation, so you may not like exactly where I put my black. That's okay. You can put it somewhere else. I don't have a left, right specific here. I am picking up a little more of the black again. In fact, I'm going back to the old puddle. And about middle, I'm going to put a couple little streaks down. I'm going to come underneath my chair arm and pull a little color. And maybe one or two little just streaks down there too as well. Again, I want you to see that I'm just wiping my brush up. I'm not cleaning it. It's not gone in water. I'm just wiping it off. I'm going to go back to my red. And I'm going to do the next picket, knowing my color is getting a little dirty because I've not cleaned my brush. It's okay. I'm choosing to skip the arm. Going all the way down to my seat. I'm going to pick up a little bit of black. And I'm going to go around the top of this one and start pulling down just a little bit, probably about maybe a quarter of the way. And then I'm going to go inside and do a couple black marks, pick up a couple places where I can show some definition. And I'm going to again go underneath my arm. And I'm going to pull down on the right edge, kind of strong with a black line, okay? I'm going to wipe my brush off. Sorry, guys. Ryan's upstairs laughing, and it makes me laugh. It just does. I'm picking up some red again. I'm going to fill in the next picket. Don't worry if your color is less pure than it was to begin with. It's okay. And if it really, 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 really bothers you, go ahead and wash your brush. This is your piece. I'm showing you a way to do it. I always know I am not the only way to do something. Sometimes I do things that click with you. Sometimes you need to hear it a different way from someone else, and that's okay. We are all in the business of learning however it makes the most sense to us. I'm still in that business. Okay, I'm wiping off my brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of black, and I'm going to go along the top half and then start going down the edge of this picket, and I do get kind of sketchy. I do a couple little sketchy lines inside here. When I get underneath, I'm going to make a pretty significant line underneath it and then go down on the right side, okay? Wipe off your brush, pick up some red. Let's do this last picket that's much smaller. Try to maintain its shape somewhat. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I mean, you don't want it to get all wonky on you either. Here's my picket. It ends up underneath here. Wiping my brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the black. I'm going to start here. I'm going to go underneath my arm. I'm going to go quite strongly on the outer edge. Up here, I'm just going to be a little strong on the outer edge next to where it's meeting that arm. Maybe just a line or two in there. Okay. You can either rinse your brush off or wipe it off just really well on your paper towel. You're going to pick up a little bit of white. Again, I'm still picking up just a little bit, just kind of on the tip of my brush. I don't want this to become pink though, so I'm not playing with it a whole lot. I'm going to come up a little, very little sketchy little marks there. I'm going to pull a little white up and a couple little marks on my first picket. Second picket, I'm going to kind of go around that top part. And if working with a flat like this doesn't work for you, just go ahead and pick up a round or a liner brush. It's fine. I don't want, because my paint is still wet, I don't want to press too hard because I don't want a lot of pink. So when I'm laying this down, I'm laying it down quite easy. Okay. Don't worry about it. You can always come back and strengthen those highlights. I am rinsing my brush just so it's not so goobly gloppy. You don't have to. You could just wipe it off. We're now going to do the front arm and the back arm. So the front arm, let's start with some red. I hope you're noticing that my base coating is not like perfection at all. I like that I'm seeing some of my tan come through there. Okay, so kind of have a little bit of an odd shape, but it's okay. I've not washed my brush. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of black. I still wanna make sure I'm using kind of as much of a chisel edge on there as I can. And I'm gonna think about this as being a little bit of a rectangle up here. So there's the top of my rectangle. Maybe you can kind of actually see that little line. And then from that corner, I'm gonna start on the chisel edge, just pulling back, and it's gonna get skinnier as I go that way. And I'm gonna make sure I get a little bit of shading. This back side. I'm gonna pull a little down. I'm gonna come all the way in back with a little bit of black on my brush. I'm gonna pull a little down. And I might bring a line and maybe pull a little up here and there. I'm wiping my brush off, not cleaning it, picking up the littlest bit of white. And I'm gonna make sure I have a couple of dashes here. And maybe a couple dashes in the back of my arm. All right. It's not complete. It shouldn't look complete. It's just the beginning, okay? So clean your brush, wash your brush, wipe it off, whatever works for you, and then come back right next to the pickets in the back and start filling in your back arm of your chair. And again, this is where a photo reference becomes very handy, because me telling you one thing and you looking at a picture probably instills a little different view. Like I just got black on my brush. I can't tell you how I did that because I don't know. But I'm gonna clean it off. I'm now go back and pick up just a little bit on the chisel of my brush. And I'm kind of building this back arm. So there's a little bit of slant. There's a line. There's a little bit of line that creates that illusion of depth on our back part of the chair. Make sure it's nice and dark right next to the pickets on the back. Next to them as well. And then it just needs a couple little splashes. Maybe a little black up on the top part. And a little bit of white. Heard weird electronic sounds. I have no idea what they were. A little here, a little up here. Okay. You can always come back and add more lines. For right now, we're good. I'm not even cleaning my brush. I'm going back into my red. And that little bit of L we did, let's just go ahead and give it some red color. Don't worry if you're going over some leaves or anything. We've just done the initial leaves there. Brush is dirty, picking up some black. Underneath, pulling a little black in. At the corner, pulling a little black toward the right. And where it's going to meet everything, a little black back that way. Okay. Take a breath. All right, we're going to fill in the box around the seat with red. You can rinse your brush, or you don't have to. So I'm going to start back here, and here is my box. This is like a big rectangle. And we're going to stop at the leg, okay? It does not matter. I'm saying this again. If some of your colors get a little muddy because there's been black in your brush, you want that variation of color happening, because that's what will happen when you look at a picture of a weathered chair. Now let's go next to the leg and start building that box angle the other direction. So it goes to the leg. This actually goes over the leg. And what we're going to do is pick up a little black. Hi, Jeannie. And I want you next to that leg to put a little bit of black and pull, while it's wet, pull toward that section. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on this edge too. We're going to come here, just a little black. If you're not comfortable doing this with the chisel edge of your brush, lay down a line of color and then just pull with a little bit of a flat brush. I'm going to use the chisel edge of my brush. Just go right down there. And I'm going to a couple little swipes inside there. That was very unscientific at all. Just a couple little swipes here and there too. Big breath. Go back and wipe off your brush just on your paper towel, and then pick up your red and start underneath your back arm and come down with a leg. Don't worry if you are getting some muddied colors. It's okay. If you don't like it, you can always go back and clean your brush. I'm not even worrying about going all the way down because I know I'm going to come back with a whole lot more color happening here. But for now, I'm going to pick up a little more of my black using the chisel edge of my brush. I'm going to go underneath this arm, and I'm going to come down the back side and just pull a little black for shadow. And I'm going to come next to that box that we just did, black next to it, and pull it back into black under, and pull a little black down. Wipe your brush really well to pick up a little bit of white on the chisel of your brush. And just at this very top, I want you to do a couple little, quick little lines. Both sections. We're going to do this again. So this is going to disappear on us. Trust me. You just want a little bit of white. You're going to give it a little bit of a highlight. Go back into your red. Pull down the little bit of red that you're going to see coming from underneath. If you want, you can pull a little black and pull too. We're going to cover 90% of that's going to get covered with flowers, but if you need to make sure you have a leg showing, this is the time to do it. And there's probably a leg right about here too. Because our chairs are not special, they have 4 legs. But we're not going to do a ton with them. We do have this one leg here we do need to do something with, and I've run out of paint. So let's pull this leg down underneath. Just pull it down. Wipe your brush. Pick up a good amount of black. I'm picking it up. I'm just laying it on my chisel edge. And it doesn't go too far. You see that? I'm going to go underneath where my chair arm is. And from that, I'm going to, with a light pressure, pull down. And then about midway, I'm going to draw a line with the dark or the black. And this way, it should appear to be a post. Does that make sense? Hopefully that made sense. Pull a little black here, a little black here. All right. We'll worry about the highlight there in just a minute. Go back to, wipe off your brush, go back to your red, and we're gonna fill in this box seat. And just think of this as a rectangle for right now. Just gonna filling in this color. I like seeing a little bit of my desert sand pop through here and there, so I don't fret about it. But I've got this red. I go and pull some black. First place I'm going to lay that down is next to my pickets. Then I'm going to give just a tiny bit, like a 1/4 of an inch, that's just red. And then I bring a black line down. Put a little black line on top too. I've already got my white highlight line there, so I can use that as an idea of I want to go have a couple distinct panels, I guess. So I lay them down and then I can just pull them in toward the red. Doesn't have to be even, doesn't have to all start in the same spot, but I want there to look like there's some wear. Let's go back to red and let's fill this little shape in, and it's basically you're filling in more of the seat that you see from the other angle. How fun, it already did the shading for me. You just want it to be shaded next to the leg. That corner has a lot of shading happening. Wipe your brush really, 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 really well. Go back and pick up some white. Again, highlight this top part of the box here strongly. And just a little bit catching here and there. Maybe. Take a very deep breath. Rinse your brush. I want you to look. It is not perfect in any way, shape, or form. You see some of my base color, my tan color popping through. That is something I wanted. You can do more on your bottom legs if you knew they were going to be standing out. I know, pulling this for a second, that I'm going to come back now and pull even a little more greens in there. So I'm going to cover them up. But even if you look closely, you can still see some of the tan popping through there. And there's not a lot of detail happening on those legs. So before I go on, I am going to go back to my greens for just a moment. And whether I'm using the same flat or whether I flip to a round, it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure that I have encompassed the lower parts of my piece. Maybe getting a little stronger up over the We're going to call that the L. I don't know what it's actually called. But I really want to make sure I've got some really good base. Oops, that's blue. That's not the color I wanted. If it happens to you, take a clean brush and go from the opposite way you put it on to pick it up, to pick up your boo-boos, okay? And then I can go back on. All right. We can add more green after we get our flowers on here as well. So I'm going to set this aside for just a moment. We'll come back to it. And I'm going to pull. This is what I've done so far. Again, I want you to see that it's not perfect at all. There's a lot of illusion happening with my greens and everything else. So if you want, you can let it dry completely. And that's where this piece would be at. I don't mind having some wet greens happening. In fact, I think it's kind of good because some of those greens then become blending with your yellows. So we might just continue on with this at this point. So I'm going to pick up some yellow. I'm pretty sure I said primary yellow. I don't know where my sheet is. But any good, clean yellow will do. Cad, Semi, those are all good yellows. So let's take this one to begin with. And one of the first things I like to do when I do these more faux-ish flowers is I like to use a well-loved brush. By well-loved, I may mean abused or not cleaned well enough, but it serves a purpose. So I'm going to show you real quick. If I take this and I put it into my yellow paint, I don't want to take anything and go directly from that to my surface because it's going to be very harsh. It's going to be like that. Look at the blob. So I'm going to want to tap it off a little bit, and that way what I end up with was this great texture. And that is a great way to start your flowers, to have something in the background. And that's what I'm going to do primarily here, just tapping. So when I do this, I'm just picking up a little paint and I'm tapping it off. I know I want there to be quite a bit of yellow flower over here. I'm going over my chair. I also know I want to bring in a little yellow flower here and there too. So pulling it a little bit here and there too. I know it's not primarily yellow on the other side, but having a little bit of that color follow through will be pleasing to the eye and just kind of makes you like you thought about it, okay? So this is just my beginning little pouncy flowers, okay? I'm not cleaning this brush. I am wiping it off. I know I need stronger yellow flowers over in this corner, but I'm not going to do them quite this second. I'm going to actually start building my purples as well. So my purples were dioxide purple, lavender, which is what I'm going to start with. Sure is. And lilac meadow. So you're going to want to have all three of those out if you're doing the purple flower method. So I've got those two. I need to grab a little of this as well. And I'm going to real quick oops, I'm going to get that brush in water. Give me just a second here. I'm going to show you something. All right, so these are what we're looking to develop. And I know it's kind of a little bit of a challenge to see, but really there is a lot of the medium value first. So we're starting with that medium value. We'll go to the darker value. We'll pick up the lighter value, and then we'll even pick up a little white. But we're just going to start for now with that semi-clean brush and the medium value. So here would be my lighter value, which is the lilac meadow, lavender, and dioxide purple. So I'm going to take this, and just like we did before, tapping it off. Don't want to be too much, but this is where I really want to start putting in the idea that I have a lot of purple flowers happening, and I'm okay going over my chair, around my chair, coming back and picking up more color. I want my flowers to kind of be going up and off to that direction. I'm not going to forget about these little spots in between. Lots of flower down here. I haven't finished my strong yellow yet. I'm going to do that shortly. But I definitely have this beginning color happening all the way around my chair. My chair is still the star, but I certainly have this lavender color happening down below, coming up onto the chair. Quite a bit of it. Okay, not clean my brush. Going into the darker purple, tapping it a little bit. I'm going to start adding a little bit of this darker purple. Need a little more of that. Uh-huh, I do. It's not coming out. I don't want to cover up my lavender in this case too much. I just want to see some of this purple through it. Okay, don't wash your brush. Wipe it on a paper towel. Go into your lightest value. So this is my lilac fields. And this time be very, very light when you're pressing down. We still want to have a lot of that light color, but I don't want to smush it. I'm not looking to blend it as much. I'm looking to just have it be what it is. Just these taps of color. If you by chance don't have a well-up brush, you can pick up an inexpensive round scruffy brush. They tend to be more in the artist sections, but also the kids sections is a great place to look. Okay, so we've done some lighter values. Hang on to that brush for 1 sec as you come back with a round brush to put in some stronger yellows before we completely cover this up. So I'm just using a round brush, and I'm just going to pull some stronger yellows before they get to be too purpley. You could have done this earlier too, but I like to have some of that purple behind there. And I'm just pulling like streaks of color. Your other option is to load your brush, and you could do some more dotty type flowers with the yellow to make them stand out too. I kind of like the swishies, but there's nothing wrong with that either. We'll come back in the very end and add the greens that kind of help pull it all together. So I said just hang on to that brush. I have not washed it. I am now going to go into a little bit of white. Have not washed the brush. Tapping it off a little bit. And I'm going to be very, very light pressured now as I kind of add the very little bits of white to this. If I hit a point where I've got white, well, that's way too white, I can always come back with any of the colors. I can come back with the lavender, I can come back with the purple, but I want to make sure I have a lot of highlights on the very tips of my flowers. But I just went back into the purple because it's got a little too white. But have fun with this. Be loose and fun and light and airy. If you need a bit of a rule, keep it a little darker next to your chair openings and get lighter as you go up. A little darker towards your bottom and get lighter as you go up. It's fine to have clumps of dark within, but as you get towards your top, start thinking about getting lighter. Make sure you come back and add a little bit of the white sneaking in here and there too. All right, we can get carried away, carried away, carried away. All right. To finish it off, we want to just make sure we have some very strong greens on our bottom. So I'm going to quick go back to this. And I'm going to go into just using my round brush. You can use a flat brush too, but I kind of like to use a round brush for this. And I'm going to go into my darker greens. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm really going to pull some significant final touches of this darker green at different levels. Maybe as I get toward this corner, I might lighten it up a little more with a couple more of the lighter greens, that brighter green, that in this case it's festive. It's fine to come up and add a couple little lines up in here too, because we're going to have higher greenery up here. I need a little darker color up there. And when I work off my round brush, I'm just kind of working off the tip to have these skinnier lines, and maybe I set it down to create a couple little ideas of where there might be clumps of greenery leaves. Okay. Rinse that out. No two are ever going to look alike. This does not exactly look like that. There's a little more yellow in this one than there is in this one, but not a lot. Our chair highlights are different. There's definitely some strong colors showing through from the background on this one. Maybe a little less, but maybe a little more so right underneath the chair arms there. a sec. I'm going to find us again. Somehow I've misplaced us. Certainly was not my intention, but it happens. All right, so I'm going to pull you guys back up. Look here. Had to draw your chair. I think I finally got it. You know, I originally drew this chair, so I get it. I'm going to this way. That is our purple fields. So I hope it all comes together and makes sense. Do this real quick. But I want you more than anything to know that you just break things down in little pieces. Look at the chair. We didn't just base coat the chair and then come back and add shading and highlighting. There's things falling down upstairs. We really just did a picket. We brought it all the way down. We gave it some shades, some highlighting, and that made it a little more doable to create the entire chair. Same thing with our flowers. We don't just go, ta-da, there's purple flowers. We can show you that by starting with that mid value, adding some depth, adding a lighter value, topping it off with a little white, that we're able to get really, I mean, there's quite a bit of dimension into those flowers. And remember, this is just painted in my multimedia pad. So it's not like the surface per se is doing anything for it. Sometimes I think when I paint on reclaimed wood, when I do a lot of the dry brushing and I'm allowing the patina of the wood to add to my painting, you know, that's utilizing the surface. Where when we're painting in something like a multimedia pad, we're gaining those textures and the depth in a different way. I love to be able to give you guys some extras. So I gave you a little extra on how to apply your pattern. You may well know how to apply a pattern, but I think sometimes it's good to just have those little reminders. Getting to see that background just for the background, that was it. We weren't talking about anything else, but you could just kind of get an idea of how blending those colors really can work. And I showed you a little bit on the multimedia pad that I did it kind of sort of by adding water and working around the image that was already on there. It's different. The end result's not that different, but it's just another way to do things. I am not the end-all, end-all. I encourage you. I appreciate when you guys are seeking other people to help you find different things. I love to tell a story like this, that I can tell you 10 times how to paint a tree, and you can go, I just don't get it. And Susie down the street can say, hey, if you paint a tree like this, and you go, oh my God, I've got it. It's we all communicate differently. We all hear things differently at different times. It is my honor. It is my privilege, and I truly love being able to share what I do know with you and hopefully be able to break it down in ways that make sense for you to be able to go ahead and achieve something similar. Never has to be exactly alike. Don't want it to be exactly alike. So that's going to conclude our purple fields on time, with my son behaving, the dog's only barking a couple times, only being covered 40% in paint. If you have any questions at all, please, please, please let me know, whether it's in a comment, if you need to email me directly. My email is cheerstocreativity@gmail.com. Or you can even use our text service. I'll see if I can do this, 847-813-1668. And I can get back to you that way as well. We have a class coming next Tuesday, which is Hometown Americana, which is that lovely rustic barn and some fun flowers in front as well. And again, there we're going to show you different flowers you can use too. We did these as a purple field. I showed you doing them as more of a poppy field, some more red. But by all means, if you've seen any of my wildflowers, this whole thing could be yellows and reds and purples and whites. You can add as many colors as you want. So that is what I've got for you tonight. Thank you so very much. And you know, I would love, 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 love to see what you do with this project. And I think the people who've taken it with you would like it too. Showing and telling isn't just showing and not just telling. It's giving us an opportunity to see what other people do with the same information. It gives us an opportunity to look at what you've done and go, oh my goodness, wow, I never would have thought to add one single flower as a highlight. I never would have thought that a purple chair with purple flowers would have worked. Whatever it might be, you guys have more creativity and imagination than you can even possibly imagine. I'm just completely honored and grateful that I get to do what I do, and that I get to share this with you. So have a great evening. I am going to go wash my brushes, possibly wash my hands, and tuck one very special young man into bed. Until I see you again, please be kind, be safe, and cheers. Good night, guys. Bye-bye.